Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles, and it's always a pleasure to share facts and viewpoints in the world of sports, as well as feature our extraordinary guests. This week is no different. Before I introduce this gentleman, I want to let you all know to go to my YouTube page to check out past episodes of So Much to Talk About, which is N as in No, S as in Sam, I as in Indigo World. That's NSI World, to check out past shows, past interviews. And I'm definitely going to be posting this interview pretty soon because there is so much going on with this team that I'm going to talk with my guest about, the Tennessee Titans, and a lot of COVID cases and how just the coronavirus has definitely reached sports in more than one light, in baseball and now in football. I want to introduce this gentleman. This gentleman is the ESPN NFL Nation Tennessee Titans reporter, and he also covered the Philadelphia Eagles. And the last year of his coverage of the Eagles, they won the Super Bowl over the New England Patriots. And he has also covered the Baltimore Ravens for the Baltimore Times, as well as the San Francisco 49ers for Bay Sports Net. And he covered the Eagles actually for the Eagles Wire, which is part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. He's one of the respected journalists in all of the NFL. And also he has sports management experience as well, as he was the director of marketing and client relations for 2010 Sports Management Group. Just a Renaissance cat for sure. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Turron Davenport on So Much to Talk About. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing really well, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad we can get this going.
Yes, sir. I'm glad too. And today, earlier today, which is Saturday, October 10th, Mike Vrabel and the Titans returned to the facility for the first time since September 29th. And what was the mood overall with Mike Vrabel and his press conference, and also Kevin Byard and Ryan Tannehill spoke as well. So talk about the mood and talk about how the Titans are reacting to all the scrutiny that's going on with the COVID cases hitting this franchise.
Yeah, these guys are really excited to be back in the building. That's one thing I've noticed since I've gotten here to cover this team over the last 2 years and this season as well. Mm-hmm. There's a work ethic that I think is really remarkable. They have a blue-collar mindset. That's how they approach things. So being able to get back to work, that's something that, you know, it's music to their ears. So they're excited about that.
Music City, Nashville.
But they're excited about that. But that being said, it's not just excitement to get back in the building. They're ready to go out and win. Kevin Byard, he said that we're 3-0 and just looking to go 4-0. That's what he said. They're thankful that the investigation is over. Mike Vrabel actually, he started his press conference by thanking the NFL and NFLPA for getting things done and getting them back into the building in a safe manner. So I thought that was really outstanding. But then to touch on what you said in regards to the feedback after seeing different people chime in, Ryan Tannehill had a very interesting quote, and he just really said that it's a snap to judgment society that we live in, and people need to, before they form such a strong opinion and jump down somebody's throat, they need to look at the details and investigate and get that. And I agree with them, because you look at it, the way things are now, you're not innocent till you're proven guilty. You're guilty till you're proven innocent. And that's across many boards, not just in sports. Kevin Byard, he said that he's taking note and he's going to use it as motivation to let the other guys know that there's a lot of negative talk about them. And I think when you have a team like this, and that's why I asked all three of them specifically about the focus, and if this adversity makes them dial and lock in a little bit more. Because, I mean, that's at this point, you know, you got to lean on each other because everybody is talking bad about you. So that's really the mindset that they're taking, and I respect that.
Well, no, absolutely, and Turron, and with the Titans, and they were playing good football as well. They were building off their AFC Championship game appearance last year, and talk more about that motivation. Like, can this team be able to possibly win the AFC South? You know, and with their great start, and also with the personnel and everyone starting to come back healthy as well. AJ Brown practiced in full today, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And AJ Brown is actually very likely to play. He's listed as questionable,
Mm-hmm.
but he's likely to play from what I've been told. We'll see what happens there. But you're right. They have some people that are out. Corey Davis, Adam Humphries. There are multiple guys. You know, Jeffrey Simmons,
Mm-hmm.
Daquan Jones. These are huge players. Christian Fulton for that defense and for the passing game. So they're going to have to work through that. They have been playing good football. You mentioned the AFC Championship game getting there. That's something that they've kind of put behind them.
Mm-hmm.
It is good that they did that as far as getting to that point, because this year, if they get to the playoffs, it's not a matter of, okay, we haven't been there before. It's a matter of, okay, been there, done that. We understand it's just another game.
Mm-hmm.
Stakes are a little bit higher because it's win or go home. I think that's the approach that they're taking. But it gave them the confidence too. You definitely being around the guys, you could definitely feel a little bit more swag, a little bit more confidence from them,
Mm-hmm.
which is always good because as a professional athlete, everybody in that league is talented.
Yep.
If you have that mental focus and confidence, that's one of the keys to being above the rest. So that's a good thing for them. The AFC South, that division is really interesting. You have the Houston Texans who imploded. They fired their
Yeah.
GM slash head coach
Mm-hmm.
in Bill O'Brien. And then the Jaguars are an interesting team. They're going to be competitive because their style of play,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really in the runnings for the top of the division. So it really comes down to the Titans and to the Colts. They'll have back-to-back games against the Colts next month, well, later this month and into November. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a heavy factor. And then also you have these AFC games that the Titans have to play. You know, they're going to have the Steelers, they have the Bills. These are games that could definitely have a lot to do with seeding in the conference itself.
Wow, that's right. And they don't have any bye week anymore either. They had their bye week basically last week. So
Yeah.
it's 13 straight weeks. And how do you think, like, with the Steelers, what they had to go through? I mean, you know, having their bye taken away, you know, like do you think there could be some animosity in that game between the Steelers and Titans later on? Week 7, I believe they play each other, right?
Yeah, one of the things that always amuses me about NFL athletes, just professional athletes, period, it's like they're always looking for another thing
An
for
edge.
motivation. And they really don't need the edge, but they're looking for it. And I mentioned what Kevin Byard said earlier, and then you look at these Steelers, you're right. They're going to have a different edge. And it's funny because they keep saying, okay, well, if the Bills game gets forfeit, our game needs to be forfeited too. But what these guys don't realize is that will cost them a game check, and nobody's trying to lose money. So
That's right.
it's funny, you know, you got to make sure, and it goes back to what Ryan Tannehill said: a snap to judgment society.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't form strong opinions if you don't know the facts. And one of the things that some of these Steelers don't know, for whatever reason, is that if that game was forfeited, they forfeit their game check. So I think it's kind of comes full circle.
Do you think the Titans could get fined by the league based on the investigations and what has been said to have happened?
It's definitely possible, but the Titans, Mike Vrabel, some of the other people within the organization, they've maintained that they followed all protocols.
Mm-hmm.
I respect the fact that they have been fully transparent. Every player, every coach was made available to the NFL. The NFL talked to a lot of them. So if there was an issue or a violation of procedure, it's going to be found. But I think a lot of it is just a matter of a miscommunication. And here's a perfect example. I asked Ryan Tannehill today about the enhanced protocols. And one of the enhanced protocols is to where everybody on the field has to wear gloves. The quarterbacks, their throwing hand could be exposed, but they're supposed to have a glove on their non-throwing hand. So I asked Tannehill about that, and he said he hadn't done that since his rookie year, and he did it, I think it was against Buffalo, he said, in Buffalo, so it's cold. He said he took it off and he didn't like it. But later on, he said that he's not sure if that's still a part of the protocol.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, they just went over protocol this morning in a virtual meeting. And then on top of that, they're going to reiterate whatever things have to be reiterated before they got back onto the field. So those are some of the things that just, there's just an example of how it could get jumbled, and there's a lot to sort through. So I think it really was a matter of miscommunication. I don't think that there were any egregious attempts or violations of procedure or protocol. That's just me.
Yeah, right. You never know, but it's just crazy. One day at a time, when something comes up, for sure. Wow. Here with Turron Davenport, who is the Tennessee Titans writer for ESPN.com and one of the best writers, NFL writers in the nation, for sure. And Turron, I mean, it's the truth, for sure. I wanted to ask you about the NFL overall. I was watching NFL Live this past week, and they mentioned that it would take they did the numbers and crunched the numbers. And they mentioned, I believe it was Dan Orlovsky saying that it would take $25 million for each team to build a bubble for their team individually. And that's like a drop in the bucket, basically, and also, like, you look at the NBA, how they spent money to be able to keep their players safe and everything. It is a different situation because the NBA only has 12 players on a roster, and plus you have maybe 20 other staff members that are there. But in the NFL, though, you have a lot of these facilities, right, Turron, are like in suburban areas, right? So they have a lot of hotels out there. They have a lot of restaurants. They have a lot of thrift shops around, things like that. Why hasn't the NFL come up with a procedure in all 32 teams putting their teams in a bubble and then having their families visit them occasionally and just do that for the next 3 months? I mean, what do you think the NFL really takes this seriously, this pandemic?
I think they take it seriously, but they're a bottom line business, and any business, what runs everything, cash. So that's something you have to factor in when you look at the bubble for the NFL as it would be compared to the one for the NBA. There's two things you have to remember. There are less teams because, remember, a lot of teams were left behind to go to that bubble. But then in addition to that, within that bubble, that's where all of the games were played. So you weren't flying from Nashville to Green Bay. You're not flying from Houston to wherever. That's not happening in the NBA. So that being said, you have to account for, what do you do? Do you put the flight attendants in bubbles? Do you put the pilots in bubbles? Do you put the people who work in the restaurants and the hotels where the players are going to have to travel to for games in bubbles? It goes beyond just the guys on the team and the coaching staffs and team personnel. And I think that's the major thing. It sounds good. It definitely sounds good in theory, and I could see it, but there's more to it than just simply having bubbles in each city.
How are the players, the Tennessee Titans, feeling overall from the standpoint? Do they feel like, has anyone said like this season, could be like feeling defeated a little bit with this instance going on? Okay.
No.
Okay.
And that's the one of the many things I respect about these players is they understand that there are things you can control and things you can't. And this is a pandemic. Things are going to happen. Obviously, you don't want yourself to contract the virus. You don't want your friends to contract the virus. You don't want anybody to.
Yes.
But the truth is, people are going to contract it. And they're not taking a mercy me or woe is me or hey, I'm disappointed. No, they're frustrated because they wanted to get back to work. But really, there isn't a matter of feeling unsafe. They're concerned because guys like Kevin Byard have newborns. So that's something, and I'm talking about a very newborn, just over a month and a half old. So that's obviously something that is going to be on his mind. But to the most part, they don't really feel unsafe. And I'll say this, they have to go through PRC and POC testing just to return to the building. And as a matter of fact, I think that Titans facility is probably one of the safer facilities in the league now because of everything that had to happen in order to get them right to get back in the building, and then also to maintain everything being okay. And I'll tell you, as someone who was in tier 2 throughout training camp and into the first week of the season, I opted out of that because I just didn't want to go daily. But they had select reporters, 3 of us, who had to go and get testing each and every day. They do a quick nostril swab on each nostril. It's not the ultra invasive one that with the long Q-tip, but they do that and they run the test and they make sure that everything is checked out. And I mean, the process is very thorough. It just, in this case, there was a mini outbreak, but the guys don't feel unsafe at all.
Wow. Well, here with Turron Davenport, who is the writer for the Tennessee Titans, covers the Tennessee Titans for ESPN.com. And Turron, I wanted to ask you, it's very interesting. Nashville, the city of Nashville, of course, is the music city, as we alluded to earlier. And it's just, it's pretty much the 3rd biggest city when it comes to the music industry behind New York and Los Angeles. They're looking to get a baseball team there, the Nashville Stars, and it could be historic with black front office and black ownership looking to have that team. And now, how will that really augment Nashville if the Stars are able to come into the city, and also with the historical significance behind the Stars with black ownership and black front office execs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a correlation. And if they are able to get a baseball team here, that would just add to the growth of this city. And I tell you, in 2 years, a little over 2 years, I came here July 29th, 2018. And in that time, I've seen things begin to expand, especially in the downtown area. And before I got here, the growth has been just ridiculous. So if they could get a baseball team, that would be really good. I just want to see if the fans here in Nashville will shift from the Braves to the Stars. That's going to be something that you have to see. Maybe if they could come out and be successful quickly, maybe they would shift to that. Right now, I'll be honest with you, I cover the Titans, but Nashville is a hockey city. This city is 1,000% behind the Predators. They have basically gotten top dibs on things. The Titans are working their way in there, especially after that run they had last year. So it's going to be really cool to see that continue to carry out. But if you were throwing a baseball team as well, that would be awesome. I just wonder where they would put it. And it would be really good. And to be honest with you, I wish they would take it even further and get the Memphis Grizzlies up here too. But I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, Memphis won't let that happen at all.
No. There's a rivalry, Memphis and Nashville. They have a rivalry, even though the people here in Nashville root for the Grizzlies because that's Tennessee's team. But there's a rivalry between the two cities.
That's right. And with speaking of music, Memphis has that history with Stax, as well. So definitely, it's just, I haven't been to Nashville, but I love Memphis. It's just infectious, definitely that history for sure. And Turron, now you covered the Philadelphia Eagles and you're an author of 3 books as well. The one book, Carson Wentz, Soaring with the Eagles, and also Football, a Love Story, and also What Did Football Teach Me? So talk about being an author, writing these books, and talk more about the parallels of life and football, because it kind of reminds me of Sal Palatonio's book, when Football in America. Remember that book where he compared a lot to Manifest Destiny, John Coltrane, and everything. So talk about the values you learned from football yourself.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that book, Football, a Love Story, and What Did Football Teach Me, is actually a 2-part series, 100 stories from movers and shakers within the NFL, within ladies football, college. We have some pretty significant people in there, Steve Smith Sr., John Harbaugh, there's a lot of people in there. I could take a while naming everybody, but yeah, that book helped bring out some of the things that football has taught me. And I know one of the biggest things and biggest lessons I've got from football is just that competitive spirit, where I don't like anybody to be better than me or beat me in anything.
Yeah.
And that's something that I mean, there's sometimes, I mean, it goes to things as silly as driving on the highway or walking on the sidewalk. There are times, and I have to remind myself, hey, it's not safe to keep this car that's buzzing at 85 miles an hour from passing. Let it pass you. Stop competing in everything. You don't have to compete in that. But that type of mindset, it does a really good job of driving you to be your best you.
That's
And
right.
I definitely think that's a lesson. It's taught me resilience. There have been so many things that have come up in my quest to get to this point, but I just knew from that mindset of being a football player, in high school and in college, it was, hey, you don't work around obstacles, you bust through them. And that's really something else that it taught me. There are so many lessons. And it's really interesting because, I've, for the most part, been in predominantly Black areas, and I didn't have as much exposure to some of my friends that I have now. And it's really interesting. I have two of my closest friends are white. One's in Maryland and the other one's in Abilene, Texas. And we got cool because of football. And I think, that kind of shows you just the way, if you just eliminate all barriers between each other, differences, and just drop all of the guards. A lot of us, even though we grew up different, we're very similar. And you just have to find common interests. And that's something that football has taught me, just in that Ronnie Lott, we talked to him about it. And he made a comment about the huddle. And he was like, everybody can't be in the huddle. And you're not going to like everybody in the huddle.
Yeah.
But in that huddle, all 11 guys have one goal, and that's to get to the end zone or stop the team from getting to the end zone.
That's right.
And unite because they have that one goal. And it's just the same, as people, we pretty much, for the most part, all have one goal. We want to find fulfillment in life. We want to be happy. We want to be successful. And if that's a common ground, if that's the thing that we could look at as the touchdown, then we'll all get along. But unfortunately, things just continue to come in the way, and not everyone is able to work through those things. And there we are. So those are the things that football have taught me.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. And wanted to ask you one more question about Carson Wentz. You wrote a book about Carson Wentz. You covered the Eagles, and you covered the season where Carson Wentz was heading towards an MVP award, and then he got injured in December of that season. Then Nick Foles took over. Do you think Carson Wentz is getting a bad rap? And what do you think about his play this season overall? But with none of his weapons around too, it's kind of like it's like scales balancing. You don't know what's weighted,
Yeah, well, that year was a really fun year. And I got to see Carson come in 2016. And just one of the things that stood out to me was how quickly he immersed himself as a leader within that team, despite being one of the youngest guys. That, from the start, was something that you saw. And especially once that trade was made and he was elevated to the starter just before the season, yeah, you really saw him take off. And you always could tell that there were intangible things about him that made you like, you know what? This guy's going to be successful. And it's funny because that book, I refer to myself sometimes as Eddie Much from the Bronx Tale. He was the jinxer, man. He jinxed everything. That book came out on a Wednesday, and Carson got hurt that Sunday. So I'm like, oh man, I jinxed him.
In LA, right? It was in Los Angeles.
In LA. Yeah. But as far as him now, I get it. There are issues with the offensive line. He's limited as far as the weapons are concerned. But here's the deal, and these are the facts. The team invested a number 2 pick overall, and they traded up to get him twice. And then they also invested $100 million in him. Bottom line, you got to make other people better. And it's not always easy, but you got to make other players better, and you have to elevate your team above the rest of it and be successful. That's how you measure. That's what you're paid $100 million to do. When you're a special enough player for a team to invest that money in you, you have to get it done. And that's really the bottom line. Carson will admit that his play has not been up to his standards this year. I mean, it's no secret. There's throws that have been off base. There's times where he's holding the ball and getting sacked when he should get rid of it. There are times where, he's just made bad reads, or sometimes he just hasn't made the right throw at all. So I think he has to continue to improve. And football is a funny sport because it has a way where it will humble you, but it will also make you feel like a king. And right now he's going through that humbling process after feeling like a king the first few years he's in the league. So now he just has to work his way back to that level of confidence and that level of success that he's capable of. It's going to take a team effort, but he has to lead the team.
No doubt about that. Wow. And before I let you go, Turron, I saw that you went to Cheyney University. I mean, that's history. Two of my favorite coaches of all time. And I got to meet both of these wonderful people. And John Cheyney and C. Vivian Stringer came out of Cheyney University, their first coaching jobs. And I mean, when I saw that, I was like, oh, Cheyney has a resonance to me with those two wonderful individuals, Hall of Famers. It came from there.
Man, so. The first HBCU, man, in the country.
That's right.
Some schools will say that, but Cheyney is truthfully the first. So there's a lot of pride there with what the history is concerning that school. I started at Delaware State and transferred there, and I had a great time there, and met a lot of people, and a lot of the connections I made actually have helped me get to this point. So it was definitely fulfilling.
Well, no doubt. And Mr. Turron Davenport, pleasure to have you on. So much to talk about the Titans, talk about the NFL, and talk about life in general, for sure. Appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll have you on the show in the playoffs, when the Titans are in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just hit me up, man. I appreciate you pushing it to make this happen, man. It was definitely a pleasure.
No doubt. Absolutely. Pleasure is all mine. And thank you all for watching. So much to talk about. Have a wonderful night. God bless. See you all later. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. And vote.